welcome to the fifth episode of the SBK Saturday Night Selections, a podcast where we look at the American racing on Saturday night and also the UK action on Saturday evening. We'll try and find winners at both sides of the pond. Myself and Tom Collins here pretty much every single week for SBK, and it's been up and down so far, Tom, but UK-wise, we're doing okay with winners. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're dominating on the UK front. You had a nice winner on Saturday again, the Clive Cox trained runner at Salisbury, but unfortunately we couldn't bring up that US winner. Obviously the race that we previewed in great depth, the fact that Horty was taken out is not ideal. I thought we had the winner in the bag with Breeze Easy at a decent price, but Shardy Party's just picked my selection close to home.
Have we done a podcast yet where we haven't had the race completely changed 2 hours after recording?
No, it's literally, and the thing is, it's probably going to continue this week as well, because the weather at Belmont yesterday, obviously we're recording Friday morning, the weather on Thursday was horrific. There's rain forecasts throughout today. There's a bit of a break, but there's still rain forecasts. So this race we're about to cover later in the podcast, obviously a turf event. If they have any more rain, this could be washed off the turf onto the dirt. We'll have a completely different race, but hopefully we'll cover it from both perspectives, whether it's on turf or goes to the dirt.
Yeah, the Pennine Ridge is what we'll be talking about a little bit later on. But this podcast available on all major platforms. So wherever you get your podcasts, we are there, and you can find the SBK Saturday Night Selections, obviously on YouTube as well. Leave a like on the video, comment below, whatever you want to do. Just don't do anything negative. We're not about that. We don't like that sort of stuff. So just the good stuff. We'll touch on last week. We briefly mentioned the Soaring Softly Stakes in the intro. Horty was taken out pretty much 4 hours after recording the podcast, which was a key part of the race. Derry Nan, my selection was your selection. Breeze Easy ran a cracker. So we'll start there. We'll start on the up. Breeze Easy just going down second to Chardy Party.
Yeah, I thought she ran a really good race. Javier Castellano was aggressive from the inside post. I love the position he got her in. And as they swung for home, I thought she was the most likely winner. Then Irad loomed on the outside, and the eventual winner, Chardy Party for Wes Ward. Before we touch more on Breeze Easy, I think it's great to see that filly take another step forward from a Keenan victory. She remains unbeaten 2 out of 2. They did hint that they were coming across for the Commonwealth Cup. I don't know if that's still the plan. I would probably say it's not. I think they'll probably wait for Saratoga, but I haven't seen any confirmation either way. I don't know if you have. But back to Breeze Easy. Irad has angled Chardy Party in, Luke, and I'm not happy about this because I was on Sky on Saturday and I kind of said it as my instant review of the race. I think Breeze Easy was the best filly in that race. Chardy Party had better acceleration coming around the bend. She had track position. Irad did his classic little herding intimidation to the inside. Great rider, I have to say, but he loves to bend the rules slightly in New York, and he gets away with it. There wasn't even a steward's inquiry, which was pretty shocking. I didn't necessarily thought the results should be changed, but at least a steward's inquiry to look into the race riding. Breeze Easy ran a great race in second. She started re-rallying in the closing stages when switched out wide. She's a horse to keep on side. That was just her first run in the US with Christophe Clement, and she'll definitely take a leap forward.
Have you got any more toys to throw at the pram, or are you out now? Are you?
I'm just about recovered, I think. Still a little bit sour, but Irad's a great rider. The filly that won, Chardy Party, is a really talented horse. It's just because we've got a nice price on Breeze Easy that I'm a bit sour and tender right now.
Yeah, Tom was on Sky last Saturday, by the way. If you've got that recording or have access to that, you'll find Tom being very professional. There'll be a vein just about here with a bit of anger, but very professional on the whole. Of the others, Derry Nan, I was a bit disappointed, it must be said. They tried to ride Derry Nan a little bit closer to the pace, which was interesting, but I kind of get it because we were saying in the build-up to the race, there wasn't a great deal of pace on.
Yeah, there wasn't much pace, and Wish You Well, who I thought would be the most likely pace setter, was also taken out, as well as Horty. So, I mean, what pace we thought there was, that just decreased when Wish You Well was taken out. Derry Nan, as you say, was ridden more aggressively. She was second or third round in the first bend. I don't think she stays this trip. I think she's better suited to 5.5 furlongs. Maybe she does actually stay 7, but she's better suited to picking up a pace collapse rather than being ridden prominently. On the other hand, the fourth home filly, Wonka, she needs the longer trip, as we said on the podcast. She stayed on really nicely close to home, and she's one to follow when she stepped up to an extended mile again. Yeah,
I want to say if you want to take one from the race, it would be Wonka, but I want to take about 3 or 4 of these from the race, probably the first 4. Yeah, about the first 4, I'd say in the running. But we said about on the podcast, obviously we record it nice and early to get it out, get it edited. But every time the race changes, and it's It doesn't always happen like that in America. If you're new to American racing, it doesn't always happen. But the Kentucky Derby, we had Ethereal Road taken out. Rich Strike comes in, the horse that we didn't talk about, the first reserve. He manages to win. We've had in your Beers race, the Man of War, So high. He came out, was the only pace angle in the race. The race suddenly changed straight after. I'm not making excuses for us, Tom, but we are being pretty unlucky here.
Yeah, we're not getting the rub of the green with these race setups. Sorry, whether pace horse comes out, whether a race changes complexion due to the weather, whether we get a reserve coming into one of the biggest races of the year. As I say, this week could be very interesting with one main track only entrant. Keep an eye on the weather in Belmont. Keep an eye on Twitter. If you have Twitter, the NYRA, NYRA Twitter account, they'll tell you whether the race is supposed to be on the turf or off the turf on Saturday. You need to look at that because this race could completely change complexion if they wheel this off the grass and put it on the dirt.
Yeah, absolutely so. And that is a live possibility as well. I was on Sky last night, and right towards the end of the card at Belmont, it was absolutely bucketing it down. It's meant to rain again, I believe, on Saturday for a part of the day at least. But yeah, we'll see. We'll find out probably about a minute after we finished recording this podcast. But we'll start with the runner by runner, as we do every single week for the feature race over in America. The Pennine Ridge is the feature that we're going to be talking about today. Only 7 going to post, potentially at 7 anyway. I do expect 1 or 2 of these to come out, I must say. But we'll start with the one that will be my horse to talk about, Gilded Age, who, as Tom mentioned, is the only main track only entrant in this race. Gilded Age would have a chance if they did switch the race to dirt. Did manage to run in the UAE Derby last time. It was a bit of a no-show there. Had some okay form building into that over in America, but it's hard to talk about Gilded Age before we know what's going to go on, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Look, he's not in the field if this is on turf, but if it's on dirt, definitely give him a second look. Horse number 2 will be in the field if this is on turf, and that is Daunt. He's your outsider in the field on the morning line. He's 15-1. Broke his maiden at Belmont in September, but just failed to trouble the judge in his subsequent outings. Finished behind Napoleonic War, a horse I'll come to next, last time out, and there's no reason to see why he'll reverse that form.
Limited liability is the 3 horse here. Managed to win at Keeneland last time around. Impressive coming from last to first that day. I think that was a bit of a step forward from what we've seen, but so far has been very, very impressive for Shug McGahey. Jose Ortiz taking the rides, and I would have a slight chance with limited liability, but I do prefer others.
Yes, he's improving, and so is number 4, Napoleonic War, the horse I've just touched on. He's a son of Warfront. He's 2 out of 3 in his career. His sole defeat came when he had an awful trip at Keeneland. He was the best horse in that race, had to switch 6 wide off the bend in a 6-field race, finished well for 4th, made amends last time when we both fancied him. He needs to take a step forward. This is a much tougher task, but he's 3-1, and he represents Chad Brown.
Elizar is horse number 5, a horse we haven't seen in America just yet, but you go back and watch that run of his back over in France, albeit it was on the all-weather. My word, was that impressive. He came from a long way back. He showed an awesome turn of foot. I wonder if the ground might just go against him a little bit. With that turn of foot, it might just be stunted a little bit if the ground is towards the softer side, but ability-wise, Tom, I think Elizar is bang there.
Yeah, he definitely is. Number 6 is Emmanuel, who might be the only horse actually that's guaranteed to run if this race is on turf or on dirt. He's a horse that's run all 4 times on dirt so far. This is his first try at the grass. But if you look at his pedigree, he's by more than ready out of a dam that won on grass. This should be ideal for him. He's worked nicely, represents Todd Pletcher, 5-2, and could be the lone speed in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the key part of the race, whatever surface we run on. The 7 horse and final horse in the lineup is Unanimous Consent, who is unbeaten in 3 starts so far. Really impressive last time around in a good race at Aqueduct. It hasn't actually ran at the same track more than once yet, and that's not going to continue here. As raced at Monmouth, Tampa Bay, Aqueduct, and now will race at Belmont. But this is the best horse in the race. It's whether the setup is okay for Unanimous Consent. And we'll start the overall preview, Tom, with Unanimous Consent, because he is the morning line favourite at 8-5. So impressive last time around at Aqueduct. Came from a fairway back. I think you actually texted me after the race saying that's a really good horse, but it was a very good race as well.
Yeah, I did text you. That's very good memory, Luke. I'm impressed. Yes, it was a good race. It was a nice 3-year-old event. Chancellor was in there, Fort Washington. Horses that had shown a decent level of form without being superstars. Unanimous Consent looked like he was in serious trouble as they ran at the bend for home. But that's because the pace was quickening into the race. He doesn't have instant acceleration, but what he does have is a wicked kick after he gets into gear. He got into 6th gear and he scooted away from that field. He's 3 from 3. arguably the most talented horse in this race, could make up into a Grade 1 contender. He deserves to be favourite. I'm not 100% sure that I want to play him with this pace setup, but I can certainly see the case for him.
Yeah, I think he's the best horse long term in this. Whether this race suits, I'm not sure. You could easily have sort of a, I don't know, 7-4 chance or whatever. I'm not sure what price is going to be. That is a little bit unlucky. You sort of sit there cursing yourself at a touch. We'll mention Emmanuel because this is the pace angle, regardless of I think where the race goes, turf or dirt, as you say. I think Emmanuel will be running, and importantly, he is the one that's going to set the race up for the others.
Yeah, he's the only speed in this race of what we know so far, unless another horse decides to, connections of another horse decide to completely revert on tactics. If you look at the other runners, Daunt is a hold-up performer, Napoleonic War will sit behind the speed. Limited Liability is a closer. Unanimous Consent's a closer. Elazar, well, we don't really know. Only had one start in France, but came from last to first. So you'd imagine Emmanuel's the only pace in this race. That will clearly suit him. He's instantly switched to turf after 4 dirt starts. Now, he's been running in a couple of Kentucky Derby preps, so he's got a high level of form. Whether he handle the turf as well as he does the dirt, I think he will, but the fact that it's going to be, rain softened ground isn't going to suit Emmanuel. I'm still going to stick with him in this race. He's going to be my selection because I think he's going to get the jump on this field. As I say, the pedigree screams turf. Todd Pletcher wouldn't just send him on the grass if he didn't think he wasn't going to handle it. But if this was switched to dirt, I think I'd be even more confident in his chance, Luke.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's a horse that is hard to weigh up for myself, but I think at the prices, well, if he's anywhere near the morning line price, I'd be a little bit more tentative, but we'll see what sort of price he actually is over here. Napoleonic War is a horse that we've both mentioned. I don't want to be harsh, but I was a little underwhelmed with Napoleonic War last time around, in a sense that turning for him, like, this is going to win by 5.
Yeah.
And then it came up size the eventual second. You're thinking, all right, go on then. Go on.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. We expected a little bit more, didn't we?
Yeah, it got from the sort of like, well, go and win the race to, oh my God, go and win the race. And he just about got it in a photo, but you were thinking top of the home straight, this is going to be really impressive. And then it was kind of, well, all right, then he got the job done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, first time up at Tampa, he showed brilliant acceleration. Then, as I mentioned earlier, in the runner by runner, in the Transylvania Stakes, he had a terrible trip and he scooted home late down the outside on a good track. There was rain that day. So bearing in mind, there's going to be rain this weekend as well. He could be a player because of that. But last time, he looked like he should have won by 4 lengths, as you said, but he only won by a nose and got up literally on the wire, head down on the line. I was also a little bit underwhelmed with that effort. I think he's a good horse. I think he's improving. But if you don't have a wicked kick in this race, I feel like it's going to be really difficult for him to win. Not only is he going to have to run down Emmanuel, who's a real highly talented horse, but he's also going to have to hold off the deep closers, Limited Liability, Unanimous Consent, who have better acceleration, judged on what we saw last time. I think Napoleonic War is in a difficult spot here. I'd be surprised if he could win this race. I do think he'll be banged there at the finish, especially if they stay on turf and loads more rain comes, because he'll handle that deeper surface. But I just will be surprised if he's good enough to win at this level.
Yeah, I agree with that. Before the last race, I'd have said, yeah, this race would be something that would be well on the agenda, but I don't know. I want to see a bit more from him before I side with him in a race like this. Elizar is a horse that I will be tentatively plucking for Christophe Clement. If Elizar was trained by Chad Brown, this was probably a favourite in this, or at the very least a second favourite. But Christophe Clement, no bad thing whatsoever. First-time shipper over to the States.
Well, we saw last week, didn't we, in Breeze Easy, that Christophe Clement can get his horses ready first time up. Elazar, very impressive first time in France. I really love the acceleration. And actually, he won by, I don't know, what was it, 6 or 7 lengths, but it could have been double that. He was eased down, instant acceleration, past the whole field. Yes, it wasn't a great group. The second's been beaten in handicap company since. This is a big step up in class. But the way he moved through that race was so impressive. And you can only beat what's against you. People say, this opposition wasn't as good. He's got loads to prove. He does have something to prove in here, but he's won by a margin. You put a Group 1 horse against handicappers, they'd still win by a margin. You don't have to say, the level of opposition wasn't good. It's just the visuals that this horse produced that day. Very impressive. I don't know where he's going to sit in this race. I think that he's the angle in here that I'm not too sure about, whether he'll be last early, whether he'll be third behind Napoleonic War and Emmanuel, you can make a case for both. But wherever he sits, if he does run and this remains on turf, then he's a big player in here.
Yeah, you mentioned that race at Shanty might not be against the best of horses. There are 3 winners come out of that and also a 2-time winner as well. So it's not as if we're talking about horses that have done absolutely nothing since then. However, obviously this is a bit of a step up. Works have been okay for Elizar as well over in America. Nothing sparkling, but they've been all right. They've been what you kind of want to see and expect to see. I hope they do ride Elizar a little bit different from what they did over in France. I mean, France, he was tailed off 3 lengths back of the field and just waited with, and then he showed a fantastic turn of foot. If he does that here, problems for Elizar. But sitting midfield, I think that would suit him best, especially the way that the race is going to pan out. Elizar will be the one that I just about side with. Any mention from yourself, Tom, with limited liability, Daunt or Gilded Age?
Gilded Age, obviously, real player if this is switched to the dirt, represents Belmont. He ran 3rd behind early voting on the dirt. So he's going to be well suited by the track. If this is moved to the main track and taken off the turf, obviously a non-runner if this stays on the turf. Daunt, not good enough, in my opinion. Doesn't have the tactical speed to get in an ideal position and doesn't have the kick of the likes of Unanimous Consent. Limited liability. Very impressive last time at Keeneland. I think he needs to get rolling in his races. I don't think he's got instant acceleration, but he's a real grinder. If this race somehow turns into some sort of pace speed race up front and it's set up for a closer who doesn't necessarily have the best kick, he's the horse. But look, I think there are better deep closers in this race. I think there's a better pace set up for the front runners. So I'd be looking elsewhere. And just to mention lastly, on the works, you said Elizar's works are okay. They definitely are. Christophe Clement never asked for maximum effort in the works. But I just want to talk about Emmanuel's works briefly. Now, the figures don't look incredible, like how quickly he's been running recently on the turf, but he's been working with 2 real high-class horses, Colonel Liam being one, obviously probably Todd Pletcher's best turf horse that he's got at the moment, and Annapolis being the other, who's going to be favourite for the Penn Mile. So the fact that he's been keeping that company in his works, obviously you can see works on xbtv.com if you want to have a look at who these horses are working with. The fact he's been keeping that company suggests Todd Pletcher thinks this horse is going to be dramatically improved for the step to turf rather than sticking on dirt. And we've already seen his high level of form on the artificial surface. So I think that's a major tick in his box.
Yeah, if you want to see just the times of, by the way, of the works, go on to, I don't know about you, Tom, but I use Equibase for that. You just have to make an account. There are aspects of Equibase that you can pay for, but I just use the free part of things and it's all okay. You get the times every single piece of work that horse has done in the last, I think, 6 months it is. Then you find out what position they were of workers on the day at that trip, and also you get to find out the other workers as well. So it is a very good tool, and it does help out massively with our American analysis. We got to spend a bit more time on that race because UK wise selections are slim, Tom. It's not the best of evening racing in the UK, but you've got one, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. Let's not beat around the bush. It's really not good quality. Obviously, there's fantastic racing at Epsom in the afternoon, so we can, give this a little bit of a bypass. But there is one horse, just for the purpose of this podcast, that I'll be looking into, and that's Pending Appeal in the 7:15 at Lingfield. This is actually quite an intriguing fillies novice race. There's a horse trained by Archie Watson in here called Dragon Glory. She finished second first time up behind a horse called Believing, but that came on the all-weather. Believing missed 5 lengths at the start and still managed to win the race. I think Believing is talented, but I don't think the opposition was, and that includes Dragon Glory. Dragon Glory, I imagine, will go a favourite just based on the fact that she finished second first time up. Pending Appeal ran a much, much better Goodwood novice event. Finished 5th that day under Jamie Spencer, but was ridden with tender handling, never really asked for maximum effort, and stuck on really well close to home, just under Hands and Heels. I think she's going to take a huge step forward, and being trained by Charlie Hills against an Archie Watson trained 2-year-old, I think you're going to get a decent price. So Pending Appeal in the 7:15 at Lingfield.
Pending Appeal for Tom. I'm going to ditch English racing, but I'm going to give you one in the French Derby on Sunday, the Prix Jockey Club, with Aidan O'Brien's The Acropolis, who it will be a big price. If he's anywhere sort of above 25 to 1, 25 to 1, then I think that's a great price. I think he should be about 14s or so. But last time around in the French 2000 behind Modern Games, no run whatsoever. You had to be towards the 4. Generally, that was the way of things that weekend at Longchamp. But he came from the back and managed to get into 9th. But Ryan Moore never asked him whatsoever. I've long thought this sort of trip will suit the Acropolis. He started off last year over 6 furlongs. He went off 6-1 for the Coventry, and he ran all right for a way. He was ninth in that, but he tried out 7 furlongs as well. He just looks like a horse to be screaming out for this sort of trip. He is entered as well in the Irish Derby, so a mile and a half is clearly on the minds of connections. But I think the Acropolis and the Prix de Jockey Club, he's just a bit too big over at Shanti, so I'll play him each way. They're the 2 non-US selections. We'll recap everything at the end of the pod. One question this week. This is one I don't think we got to last week, but it was from David. It says, what effect do sloppy tracks have if artificial tracks are normally described as standard/slow anyway?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And actually, it could be pertinent to this week if all the races at Belmont are taken off the turf. Sloppy track is different obviously on the dirt compared to the artificial tracks that we get over here, Polytrack and Tapeta. A standard to slow artificial surface over here would soak up and drain the water far quicker than the dirt would in America. So the fact it's considered standard to slow is, you'll still see a dry track out there. Generally, there's no standing water or anything, whereas in the States on a sloppy track, it's wet. If you have a muddy track in the States, that's more like the standard to slow over here. Muddy track and standard to slow require more stamina. Sloppy track usually favors the speed horses because standing water, it's going to play quick up front, massive kickback. Obviously, we don't have the same kind of kickback on our kind of surfaces at the moment compared to the dirt. So there's the big difference. I think it's really important to notice on the sloppy surfaces, when these races are taken off the turf, you have to look at form of horses that have previously won or run well on sloppy tracks. Over here, a horse could easily go from grass to Tapeta or Polytrack and go and win. They handle multiple conditions, but it's really unlikely, in my opinion, that a horse who has won all his races on fast dirt track and disappoints on sloppy can then go and win on sloppy. I think it's very unique and a kind of surface that a horse doesn't necessarily want. So you want to find that proven form on a sloppy or muddy track, horses that handle the wet conditions, and definitely front runners or prominent races. Yeah,
I mean, it's very unique. A horse handles dirt and turf, never mind anything else. You have the likes of Animal Kingdom, War of Will we saw a few years ago. There aren't many at the top level that can do both. But yeah, sloppy track. Also watch out if you're watching racing on a sloppy track. Sometimes the inside rail can just become an absolute puddle. Literally a puddle. It will just be standing water. Some tracks do drain faster than others. We mentioned on an earlier pod that Churchill Downs just drains like that, and it's just gone within about an hour. But yeah, some tracks, Belmont being one of them, and also Aqueduct, when it does rain, it really does rain, and it sits on the top. So watch out for that at Belmont on Saturday. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but we are expecting a fair bit of rain. Don't forget, by the way, new SBK customers will get £30 in free bets by depositing at £10. T's and C's do apply. You can put that on whatever you want. Racing wise, go for the Derby, for the Oaks, for whatever. As long as you make the account, you get £30 in free bets by depositing at £10. Tom, just repeat selections for us.
Yes, Emmanuel in the Pennine Ridge. This is the 10-12 at Belmont on Saturday night. As I say, I like him if this race remains on turf or switches to dirt. I think he's a leading player. He could be run down by unanimous consent if it's on turf, but I'm happy to take him at the prices. And the only UK selection is pending appeal in the 7:15 at Lingfield. Hopefully she goes off a nice price with the Archie Watson trained Dragon Glory in the field, and then therefore she can take a big step forward from Goodwin and prove a value winner.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip the UK racing this week. I'm gonna go to France for the Prix de Jockey Club with the Acropolis. He's I think a big each way player, and Eliza in the Pennine Ridge I think is a player as well for Christophe Clement and Joao Rosario. Like Tom, I think unanimous consent is the best horse in the race, sort of long term, but Eliza hopefully on US debut can get the job done. But that's all we got time for on the pod this week. Small matter next week, Tom, of the Belmont Stakes with Mo Donegal o'clock upcoming, but we'll get to that in a week's time. For now, hopefully we can find an American winner.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find my Mo Donegal merchandise to wear. I'm sure I'm going to find a scarf or something we can put on the pod in the background. We're going to be Team Mo Donegal next week, but we'll go into that race into much more depth on this show next week. Hopefully, as you say, we get a couple of winners this week. We need that elusive US winner at this stage on the turf. We should, hopefully. Fingers crossed, get one.
We don't need a Mo Donegal scarf. Just get a JP McManus scarf and put it on the back or something like that. It's the same colours, but we won't go into the race any deeper because that's all we need. We've been saying it for weeks. We'll get to Mo Donegal next week. Tom, thank you very much for this week.
Thanks, Luke. Best of luck.
We'll see you guys in a week time. Don't forget, you can get this podcast on all major podcast platforms. Wherever you listen to your podcast, you will be able to find us. But until next week, have a very good week. Stay safe. Look after one another. Goodbye.